Call it what you will, O world of abbreviations and labels. As a rebel, reclaiming the territory of my brain's functionality, and to soothe my wounds as an outcast from the norm, I've playfully called it many things, making up my own abbreviations to suit my neural difference. For me, I chose to call it Art Distraction Days. Well, when ADD was a thing. Now referred to as ADHD, I'll call it Art Distraction Hyper Days. Hi there, I'm Paula Walker, and I'm honored to be able to share some of my story alongside testimonies from two of my children, well, now adults, and a few of my adopted by day children from a group that I run called the Voices of Light. As an elementary student, one of the most common comments found in my report cards is, Paula just needs to focus more, or she daydreams a lot. These life-shaping words were far more kind than what my classmates would say. They simply summed up my failures as me just being stupid. I failed grade 1 because my teacher felt that keeping me for one more year would be beneficial in my world of developing language and math skills. While I did learn to read and write more effectively in that time, my prose turned to a deeper pain as I felt even more separated from the norm. At 11 years old, the torment of my overactive mind, desperate to be understood, sent me into an addiction for music. I began piano lessons, and I searched for a balance between life and my near-death experience from a self-inflicted drug overdose. Music became my refuge, my lifeline, and in my first year of piano lessons, I began to scribe both my joy and my pain into melodic refrains. I carried this very pain for what felt like many lifetimes until I was self-diagnosed with ADD after my 3 children were tested by a pediatrician and diagnosed with the same. As an infant, my son Jade showed indicators of autism. Knowledgeable witnesses brought this to my attention. I remained safely in denial. In junior kindergarten, his teacher suggested I have him tested for it based on the diagnostic criteria at the time and her own experience as an educator. As a young mother, in my own ignorance and fear, I chose to pull him out of the public system and put him into a private school, thinking I was protecting him from the potential downfall of receiving a label. I was terrified that he would carry the same paper trail of failure, like the scarlet letter D for disability that the system plagued me with as a child. As an educator now, I would instead think of them as aspects of an autistic neurology. But when Jade was younger, I wondered if he met the criteria. Since we are learning more and more about the diversity of autistic realities, what I may not have known or thought to wonder about then, I'm learning to dig deeper now in order to understand. As such, I'm currently going through testing for the same, such that I can feel justified in my advocating on behalf of neurodivergent children. Knowing that my 3 children were neurodivergent, at a very young age, I set their musical tones of survival through piano and violin lessons. And lots of singing and dancing around the house and around the piano, naturally. After all, music was helpful in allowing me to better communicate and to survive. As for my students, I was compelled to write a musical to not only help children challenged with the same neural differences, but to help others understand and better empathize with them. This birthed Lucy and Maya in 2017. In brief, it's a musical about changing one's perspectives. I wrote 24 songs to speak to varying perspectives and give voice to as many of my students as I could. Gathered through years of listening, I weaved their own words into the songs that speak to, but not limited to, mental health, neural differences, and bullying. The DDSB partnered with me in 2019, and we were set to perform the musical the following spring of 2020. I need not mention what shut that down. The poster read, Journey alongside Lucy, Maya, and their classmates as they help Lucy and teach each other to navigate the mental challenges and repercussions of childhood's social and student lives. Be empowered as the children help each other to discover a new lens on life by giving voice to their struggles as well as their passions, and witness the paths that emerge as they discover their resilience and embrace the uniqueness of their individuality. Lucy is a representation not only of me, but of my son Jade and my daughter Ariana. Today you will hear from each of them about their journey so far through the lens of ADHD, in addition to some of my students from my Voices of Light youth group, who either were a part of the musical or witnessed to a performance of it. We will be focusing on the song I See Everything, which gives voice to Lucy's then label of ADD. I hope their testimonies will inspire you. Hello, Ariana Eagleson.
Hello.
Thank you for being here. And I'm just going to ask your first question. What line or lines from the song I See Everything can you relate to as from your childhood?
I could probably relate to the part where they say the one score to measure my life. Because I feel like when you do tests like that, everybody learns differently, and some things need to be explained differently for people to understand. So it's not, if I failed the test, it's not that I didn't know the answers, it's just that I needed it explained in a different way.
Knowing what you know now, that ADHD, your earlier diagnosis with ADD, is why your mind functions differently than the norm, what do you wish your teachers better understood about you? Or how could they have helped you to better survive school?
Well, I was pretty lucky with most of my teachers. A lot of them understood what I had, and they knew that if I needed extra help, the offer was there to go to resource or anything like that. But what was frustrating is I did have some teachers who would get frustrated with me because I didn't understand things or because I was talking. And it's not that I wasn't interested in what I was learning, it's just if I had a thought pop up, I had to talk about it. And it was frustrating for me too. And I just wish the teachers, knew that it wasn't because I wasn't interested. It was just that, my mind was everywhere.
What about your peers? How did they relate to you? And what made your relationships with others functional or successful? What do you wish they could have done differently? Or are you thankful for their doing in support of your being a different wiring?
My peers were pretty supportive in my learning issues, I guess you could say. I had good friends who, were understanding, and they never really made me feel stupid. It was nice when you had other people who also struggled with learning because you felt less alone. You didn't want to be the only kid going to resource when I was in high school or elementary school. So half the time I avoided it, and I would just stay in class and do my tests there because I didn't want to go in because for some reason I felt a little bit awkward going. But now I know that it was just there for my help, but at the time it was almost embarrassing for me, it felt.
How has music and photography acted as a lifeline through the challenges you've experienced with ADHD?
It's kind of helped me in a sense where sometimes it helps me focus, but sometimes it doesn't, because then I'll just kind of go down a rabbit hole of finding music to listen to if I was doing my homework or something like that. I guess music has been a lifeline for me through what I've been through because, whenever I was going through a rough time, I just pick up my guitar or go on the piano and write songs, and especially my frustrations with, how I was treated with my learning disability. And, so I just put my frustrations into music, and it helped me a lot. And then my photography kind of was something I could get my mind off and go do things and, get out in nature and enjoy it. And so that's kind of how it was my lifeline through this.
Would you agree that a lot of what you captured in your photos were things that most people would not have seen?
Well, I hope so. Yeah, I do hope that is the case, but yeah.
Have you ever had people say to you, wow, Ariana, how did you see that?
Sometimes. Like, I find a lot of four-leaf clovers, and people are often find it fascinating because they haven't never found one, and I find a lot of them, so it's pretty cool.
How many on average would you say you have discovered with that eye of yours?
I've lost count. It's definitely over 100. Maybe, yeah. I've found a lot.
And you have proof of it too?
Yeah, I dry them in books half the time.
Thank you. So that actually leads beautifully into this next question. How do you see your ADHD as an advantage when it comes to your creativity and performance in music, or even in photography? down to that very fine view of a 4-leaf clover, like over 100 of them, that others would probably just walk right over. So just speak to that.
I guess I find it helpful for that kind of stuff because I do notice things that not everybody always notices. Sometimes it's frustrating, but for the most part it can be very useful, and it's nice to see the world in a different light sometimes, especially in hard times like these. So it can be very positive.
And I also added here working with animals, because there's something about the fact that, not only have you this keen eye to find 4-leaf clovers, but you also have a keen eye when it comes to working on the farm with animals, just kind of feeling or sensing something with them that perhaps someone else might overlook.
It does have its perks, because I do notice some things that some people don't, especially because if I point it out, people are like, what? Like, but yeah, that's, yeah.
And speak to that when it comes to working with animals on the farm or with your own dog, Miss Maddie. You noticed that Maddie had a tick. You find things on her that other people might not necessarily notice because you have such a keen eye, because you can see in multi-layers.
Yeah.
You will often notice things and see things and hear things that other people don't. As a matter of fact, studies have shown that people that are ADHD are the ones that are psychic or intuitives, or they call them empaths, or they call them mediums, or they call them prophets, depending on what it is your faith system is. So when you consider that, knowing that measure of being able to see, hear, feel, touch, how has that been an advantage for you as an animal owner or working on the farm with other animals?
I guess it is an advantage because I do notice things like if something's out of place, I'll probably notice it, or odd sounds, especially on the farm. If you hear something that's a little bit different, then you should check. And so but I don't know, that's something I've picked up just with being on the farm a lot. But yeah, I do notice little things like that, which is kind of nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or things with your dog.
Yeah, with Maddie as well. If she has a health issue, you can pick up on it pretty quickly.
What would you say to a younger version of yourself about finding a creative means of survival through the lens of ADHD?
I would just tell myself to keep doing what I do and to keep being myself, and yeah, it's okay. And I want them to know that you're not dumb, that your brain works differently, and if anything, it's an advantage because you see things that some people don't, and you have a knack for creativity that not everybody always has. But yeah, it's just I want them to know that being ADHD doesn't make you dumb or make you less knowledgeable. It just is a bit of a bump in learning. You just need things explained differently is all.
When times get a little messy, I look up and say a prayer and hope for a breath of air. When I see nothing but the world falling down, I hope for a miracle that will come back around. And I know times are tough, but I try to keep
Well, hello, Jade Eagleson.
Hello, Mother.
Thanks for stopping in and for answering some questions. What line or lines from the song I See Everything can you relate to as from your childhood?
I'd say the hearing part. I know when I was in a classroom and there's any more than one person talking, or if there's some kind of like ambient noise in the background, I'd always hone in on that and kind of lose focus of what was going on. I'd hear half of what the person was saying, half of that thing, and then whatever else I was hearing. So that was a quiet room for me was always a big deal. Just being able to kind of block out the surrounding noises.
Knowing what you know now, that ADHD, your earlier diagnosis with ADD, is why your mind functions differently than the quote unquote norm. What do you wish your teachers better understood about you, or how could they have helped you to better survive school?
I don't know if it's necessarily on the teachers and more so on the system where everything's kind of built for just a slew of kids instead of like individual needs. So there's certain classrooms where I'd actually thrive, and then others where I'd be terrible. Like when I needed to learn math or anything on like a linguistic level, it was always a bit more difficult for me because that's very, seeing here what it looks like, but if things are going on around you, that's not too easy. But if I was in shop class, that's different. You're working with your hands. That's where your focus is. You're always going to be looking at what's in your hands. So something that I wish I had was maybe just a different way of learning, more individual teaching, I suppose, and maybe more of a quiet space. But kids don't necessarily act quiet when they're told to be.
Yes, you are absolutely right. She speaks from experience over here. Okay, so what about your peers? How did they relate to you? And what made your relationships with others functional or successful?
I never really had too much of an issue with like my peers and stuff, but there would be. I think there's kind of like this toxic view on people with ADD or ADHD or anyone that's on the spectrum, because instead of just understanding that as a different way of learning, it's looked at as a disability, which is pretty unfortunate. It'd be like saying there's the vast majority of people that learn are ADHD, and they made fun of the people that aren't. It's kind of like it's not how it is, but that's kind of how the educational system made it seem in the beginning. I think the narrative's changing a little bit now, but I do wish it was more open. I mean, I came from a pretty forward-thinking era in the educational system, but in my early days of learning, like at elementary school and stuff, it was definitely, there's some sort of stigma around that.
Speaking of forward thinking and changes that are happening and shifts that are happening, they're not calling it Asperger's. They're not calling it on the spectrum. They're now literally just saying autistic. That can be a little overwhelming and daunting for those who are, trying to relate to the. Is that my grandchild?
It is.
So funny. Oh my goodness.
You just got out of the bath, so you're
That's so funny.
Probably not fit for camera.
No, probably not. I could probably blur it out. But anyway, it's a lot of work. So the next question. How has music...
Honey, I'm recording. You can't right now.
Tell her 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
How... That's awesome. How has music acted as a lifeline through the challenges you've experienced with ADHD?
I think like music for me, it was kind of like that. Sorry. Speaking of ADD, I am losing focus. Honey, can you grab him? There we go. Sorry. But when when I'm doing music, there's like a million different things to take note of all at once. What you're singing, what you're playing. So I think that like that's an environment I thrive in, like on every level, whether I'm building out a track, like on a production level, or EQing things. Your ears are listening to more, or they're listening for more than one thing, and that was kind of like a saving grace to me. And I think that's an environment where, people that are more similar to my learning style kind of thrive in. And that's it helped me to kind of navigate my ADHD or whatever you want to call it at this point. But, it helped me navigate through that and make it useful for something.
Awesome. And I think that this ties into what you just said, but you probably could add a little to this question. So how do you see your ADHD as an advantage when it comes to your creativity and performance in music? So you can tie this into the song, I See Everything, I Hear Everything. So how would you tie that in? How is it an advantage when it comes to your creativity and performance?
I'd say when I'm building out a record or a demo, or if I hear certain things in my head that I want and need to have like on that track, I need to have the steel guitar sitting here. I need to have the fiddle in this place and pan that way. And it's very particular, but when you're thinking of all these different things at once and you're just trying to look for an overall blend, with someone with ADHD is able to hear if something sticks in. And it's even if it's just like you're taking something down 5 dB, just moving that volume knob a little bit, or moving things in different places or different parts, it makes the overall track sound good. So on this last record we did, I had a lot of creative say on that, and it was really cool. My producers were super open to listening to any input I had, and and I'm really proud of it because of that.
That's awesome. You should be proud. So this last and final question is, what would you say to a younger version of yourself about finding a creative means of survival through the lens of ADHD? So I want you to think about that. This somewhat ties into number 5. How has it acted as a lifeline for you, right? But let's just say you did have someone to talk to you about this, a mentor, for example, while you were struggling in school and struggling to keep your grades at a certain level and just feeling like giving up. If you could talk to that younger version, what would you say to him?
I'd probably just explain that instead of trying to, I think like what I used to do is try to learn like everybody else, and I'd really try my best to change who I was, which isn't necessarily the way to go about things. It's more so adapting, and you realize later in life, because school doesn't really teach you the things you need to learn. They don't teach you taxes. They don't teach you any of that. You're thrown out into the world, and then you're kind of just told to handle it. And that, with my ADHD, that kind of is one of those things I had to figure out as well. There's different things that I've had to do at nighttime. So like in the morning, for instance, I'm always late to things. As you know, I am. I don't know if it's a genetic thing from the paternal side or where it comes from. But I fidget in the morning. I'm doing 100 different things, and then I look at the time and I'm like, I don't have time for any of this. And I could wake up early, but that routine is always going to be the same. So, just do everything at nighttime. Like take an hour, which is also hard to do because there's always something else to do, but take an hour to scramble, run around, and it's actually helped me to sleep better because I'm just kind of running, like just kind of burning off the rest of my energy. And, just like as hard as it is to plan, there's different ways to plan, because I'm also a scatterbrain. I'll have, like, if you were to look at my notes, I'm not perfect yet. I mean, this is a learning curve. As everyone ages, they discover who they are and why they matter and how they matter. And I think that it doesn't happen overnight. So don't get worked up if you can't do it right away. But, be patient with yourself and find the things that help you, whether it's like posting sticky notes all over your wall, all over the place helps you remember things better than do it, you know? I mean, if you're still living with your folks, maybe not a good idea to do that on their walls, but you know, when you get to your own place and your own bedroom and all that stuff, that's, you know, it's your rules. You live your life by your rules, and it only gets better. You just have to be patient.
That's great. Okay, thank you, Jade. I really appreciate you taking the time to help your mother over here with your insight and your own testimony of surviving, looking through the lens of ADHD, right? And knowing more, you're probably going to be able to help your own child, because it is genetic.
Yeah. Speaking of which,
grab them. Okay.
Are you decent? Oh yeah, you're good.
I'm just going to stop this recording. Where's my guy? Levi? Hi, look at you're wearing the pajamas that Nona Musica bought you.
Show your shirt.
Wow.
This is the first time I've seen these on you.
They're so nice. You like your pajamas? They're the same color as my sweatshirt. Look. We're the same color. Wow. Do you like my hoodie?
I've had the fortune of being connected to Lucy and Maya through the music of it, which sounds self-explanatory, but I've known Miss Walker for quite some time, and I was able to be a part of the score, as it were. I played the cello for a few of the numbers, and I have been able to share that in a few cases, both on stage as well as in a few outreach moments, spreading the Lucy and Maya goodness.
In Lucy and Maya, I play the role of Bo, who I'm pretty sure has OCD. And it's really fun to be a part of the Lucy and Maya play. You get to sing songs and learn about neurodiversities.
I was the first Maya back when I was in grade 8, when the first iteration of the Lucy and Maya musical happened. So I played, I guess, like a leading role in the first musical.
I am also another character. I am one of the bullies, Jacob. And yeah, it's really fun working with the people in this play. They're all great people. And I'm going to be completely honest, before this play, I had no idea what any, ADD, it's ADHD now. None of that. I didn't even hear the term before, and it just, now I know what it is. There's some things that I know that I don't think I would have ever known without this play. It really opens up my eyes to see the real world. I feel like it's just a special part of my life because it's just fun and lets me learn a lot of things.
So my connection to the musical is that I am a part of the ensemble. Basically, it's pretty much it. Other than Alezra, but.
Yeah, so did you want to speak to that? So who is Alezra and how does that relate to you?
Yeah, so Alezra was a character based off of myself and another student. And so it was a year after Alezra was added to the musical that I joined as a member of the ensemble. And Elva, do you mind sharing how you identify with Alezra in terms of your neural difference? She's autistic. Forgot to mention that part.
As you recall, Lucy plays the role of a grade 6 student who has been diagnosed with ADD, now referred to as ADHD. She struggles to find her voice in a system that makes her feel separated from the rest of the students. In short, she doesn't fit in to what is considered normal. After your experience with the Lucy and Maya musical, what would you say you have learned the most about ADHD?
I really like this question because it really made me think about what people consider normal and how everyone's perception of normal is very personal. but also is very false, because everyone's idea of what they see as normal is very much based on whatever perspective they see. And I think it's really beautiful because everyone's perception of, oh, well, this must be normal, or man, I wish I was normal, it isn't, because no one has a single perspective or idea of what's really going on for each individual person, because everyone's experience is different and everyone has their own idea of, well, this is what other people must perceive or think. And I think my biggest takeaway from learning about ADHD through Lucy and Maya is that the kaleidoscope, and through seeing so many different things and having the ability to kind of collect the kaleidoscope, as it were, it gives you so many opportunities to learn in different ways that personally I would have never thought.
What I learned most about neurodiversities is that it's not really like a disability or anything. It's just a different way of learning and going about, I guess, life. And a lot of people, think it's a disability, but it's a different ability, and it's pretty cool learning about all this stuff.
So my answer is kind of like Logan's, which I learned that ADHD, it is an ability, it's a different ability. So I like that saying. It just means that they comprehend things differently or do stuff differently, which isn't a bad thing.
Lucy sings I See Everything as a way to help the other students understand how her brain functions, in addition to the anxiety she feels in having to prove herself on the EQAO tests. What line in her song stands out the most for you, and why?
Like a few that stand out, like the it's so distracting and I swear I'm not overreacting, and also the part where she's like talking about how the teachers think she's being lazy, but really she's just like spacing out. Because that's like definitely something I struggle with, even on my meds. Paying attention is so difficult. The amount of times I've spaced out in the middle of the lesson, so ridiculous. I cannot pay attention even then.
Lucy sees her neurodifference as a negative thing, and it separates her on multiple levels from the world around her. However, how would you spin this into a more positive frame of reference? In other words, she looks at it as a separation from the norm, but what does it actually allow her to connect with rather than separate her from?
Like, she sees it as separation because it kind of makes her a social outcast in her school. But it also connects her, I guess, more to like the world around her. Even though people kind of like call her Luckless Lucy and stuff because they think that she seems clumsy and she's not paying attention to things, she also does mention, like in the song, that when she's playing soccer, she like sits on the ground and picks all the daisies and stuff. Like, she's more connected to like other smaller things that maybe other people wouldn't be, and she's able to like focus on like small things that maybe other people just give a passing glance. So I feel like that kind of makes her unique in a way, and able to do things maybe other people wouldn't, just because they don't focus on small things like that.
She can catch when the teacher makes errors. Yeah.
How has the musical, with its main focus on neurodiversities, reshaped your thinking with regards to how you see all people, regardless of their label or neurodifference?
Again, before this, I did not know about a lot of neurodifferences. I don't even know if I've ever even heard the term at that point, because I don't think any of my family suffers from it. But again, I do pinpoint people. I used to pinpoint people as like different, even though kind of normal doesn't even exist at this point, because everybody's different. But just like having to do stuff differently, I kind of just pin them as that. But now, yeah, I'm like, wait a minute, these people just learn differently, do stuff differently, whatever. They're all different, but they're all still people, and they're also could be good friends and stuff.
It's reshaped kind of like my view on how like common these differences are. Like I used to think it was kind of just a few people had it, but then in like experiencing the musical and seeing all these characters and seeing the development of the musical also, as you included like characters with other neurodivergencies that were like based on real people you had met in real life, and then also growing up and meeting other people that had things like ADHD and like all those kinds of things. I kind of just I feel like it's kind of expanded my view on what is considered normal for people, and kind of made me think that maybe our society is more neurodiverse than we might think it is.
There were definitely some things I learned as, having a bunch of these things myself. Like, I have autism and ADHD. I also have social anxiety. So, like, I'm definitely experienced with those sorts of things, but there were other things that I wasn't quite familiar with, and, like, ODD, for example. I didn't know that was a thing. And after finding out that that was a thing, I was like, oh, should probably, like, think twice about a person's situation before judging them, kind of. And that was kind of my takeaway. Like, I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know that. So, that's just, obviously that's just sort of an eye-opener for you when you don't know that. And then you do. And I'm just repeating myself at this point because I want to add something, but I'm not sure what I should be adding. So Miss Walker, are you okay?
During my first 8 years as a teacher, I innocently inspired many of my students to wish they were labeled or diagnosed with ADD or ADHD, simply by discounting either as a disorder. Instead, I insisted these labels were a framework which held many gifts into seeing, hearing, and knowing things that weren't easy to see, hear, or know, outside of the often narrow lens of normal. I encouraged my students to understand that if we are to fully breathe in all that surrounds us, acknowledging that life is music, we must notice or listen to everything, taking absolutely no ambiance for granted. These things that encompass are filled with energy and vibrations that act as the rhythms of life's music. The composer, the sole creator of this world, purposefully picks each note and places it into our world as life support. Even the bluebird flying by the window during the math lesson or science lesson is serving its master in the music of life's lesson. It is a reminder to all mankind that life rhythms continually move around us, gently tapping energy forces upon our every move. These vibrations are merely responding to our own, and when we acknowledge them, we become an even deeper part of this music. It's when we fail to notice the surrounding waves that we likely ought check our own pulse and respond immediately to the crisis of being locked inside a narrow lens. Thanks for taking the time to hear from some of the kids and from my adult children and from me, and I look forward to any questions you might have for me. And that's it. I'll see you in a minute.